Augustus was really rich, but like really, really rich. I think many people underestimate the true amount and, most importantly, meaningful wealth that emperor once amassed during its reign as the first emperor of the Roman Empire. And although it is obviously impossible to make an exact monetary conversion of Augustus's fortune into today's equivalent in dollars, I do think we can obtain a comparison adapted and adjusted to the limitations of his time and ours to really show the true difference in wealth between the wealthy of yesterday and the wealthy of today, which is much more than you can imagine. I can guarantee you that. Although without a doubt, no matter how much money Augustus had, to his great sorrow, he would not have been able to obtain what today allows many people in the world to have a great quality sleep, that something being the Manta Sleep masks, the sponsor of today's video. Manta Sleep offers the best sleep masks on the market by far, being extremely lightweight and comfortable for optimal rest. A sleep mask that feels like it was custom forged for your face-eye cups, straps, and even tension, all infinitely adjustable so it fits perfectly, like it was made for you. It delivers true 100% blackout, even in broad daylight, so that your REM sleep isn't interrupted by a single glimmer, without pressing a finger on your eyelids or lashes, which is actually something I've always struggled to find on the market, but Manta Sleep does it brilliantly. And for anyone who sleeps on their side, which Augustus probably also did, the Pro version is engineered with C-shaped cups and an air bubble seal that disappear into your pillow, yet still lock out all light, and thanks to that, even as you turn, it will stay in place easily. All of this is wrapped in premium, breathable fabric, modal foam cups, ventilated materials that keep your face cool and are soft enough that you forget you're wearing it. So while it is certainly unlikely you'll ever reach the level of wealth Augustus once experienced, at least you can get a Manta Sleep mask that will allow you to have a sleep quality worthy of an emperor. If you want to nurture your own strategic brilliance, whether you're writing, gaming, or meditating while you reconsider the true value of real money in a pre-digital and pre-industrial world, check out the link below to get your own Manta Sleep mask and support the channel. Thanks to Manta Sleep for sponsoring this video, and now back to our analysis into the true fortune of the first emperor of the Roman Empire. So, going back to the topic of estimating how wealthy Augustus was, first of all, yes, just for the fun of estimating an approximation of what everything he owned would be worth in a modern currency, we will try to convert all his fortune from that time into modern dollars. For this experiment, we will use the calculator from the Testament Press website, which has the best currency conversion estimator for major ancient currencies to the dollar that I have found, and I will leave the link to that website in the description so you can have fun using it too if you want. However, rather than viewing it as a literal conversion from one currency to another, see it more as a comparison of purchasing power to another. For example, instead of trying to find out how much a denarius was literally worth in dollars, it would be more helpful to find out what you could buy or acquire with a denarius compared to what you can buy or acquire with a dollar today. And it is based on that answer that we will obtain closer results to reality. For that, I will base my numbers on the average American minimum wage of 2025, which is on average $7.25 per hour. This would mean that, for example, a denarius in ancient Rome would have had the same purchasing power equivalent to what one could obtain at that time, as what a person can obtain today with the purchasing power of $43.50. I hope that in this way you can have a better idea of the true value of Augustus's fortune while calculating it, although we are going to focus mainly on his possessions and purchasing power rather than the numbers of his wealth as such. Now, we must first understand who Augustus was in the Roman system. Because his wealth did not exist in a vacuum, it came directly from the architecture of power he built around himself. And if we want to measure his wealth, we must first measure his authority. Augustus held an unprecedented combination of positions that no Roman before him ever concentrated into a single pair of hands. And every one of these roles came with its own streams of revenue, privileges, and legal powers that fed into his fortunes. He wasn't just the emperor because the Roman Empire, as a concept, didn't exist yet. For us, in retrospect, it is obvious that it was already the Roman Empire as we imagine it, but for them, what it was is the illusion of a restored republic where Augustus positioned himself not as a king, but as something far more subtle and far more economically advantageous. He was the princeps, the first citizen, a man who claimed to stand above no one and yet happened to command everything. Through something called tribunician power, Augustus had the authority to veto any law in Rome and shape the entire legal system to his benefit. Through his Imperium Proconsulare Maius, he held supreme military command over the provinces containing the vast majority of Rome's legions. And through the title of Imperator, which evolved into the word Emperor, he became the undefeated commander whose authority extended across every frontier of his now huge empire. But if there is one role that truly reveals the secret behind his wealth, it is his control over the fiscus, the imperial treasury. While the Roman Senate maintained its traditional treasury, the aerarium, Augustus effectively created a parallel financial institution under his direct personal control. This meant that revenues from the imperial provinces, from taxation, from mines, from ports, from customs duties, and from tribute, all flowed not into a public vault, but into his own treasury. This is one of the fundamental differences between Augustus and any modern billionaire. A billionaire today can own companies, stocks, patents, but they cannot create an entirely separate national treasury for their personal use, while Augustus did exactly that. And the final piece of his power was symbolic but economically essential. Augustus was the Pontifex Maximus, the supreme head of Roman religion. This gave him access to temple revenues, sacred lands, religious fines, and enormous prestige that made the richest families of Rome voluntarily donate estates, artworks, and fortunes to him, sometimes to gain favor, sometimes simply to survive politically. So before we even look at lands, provinces, and assets, we must understand that Augustus's wealth wasn't just money, it was a system completely built around himself. A structure built deliberately to funnel the economic output of the Mediterranean into his own hands. Now that we have established the sources of his authority, we can move into the concrete pillars of his wealth, like the provinces he directly controlled, the revenues he collected through the imperial system, the private estates he amassed throughout Italy and beyond, and the personal possession of entire regions like Egypt, which obeyed him not as a Roman governor, but as a king practically, although again, not said like that out loud for obvious reasons. All of this together forms the foundation from which we can begin calculating the true value of his fortune. Now that we've established the political and institutional machinery that allowed Augustus to accumulate wealth, we can finally examine the first and most extraordinary pillar of that fortune, the territories he directly controlled. And we must begin with the most shocking example of them all, because among all the provinces of the Roman world, one of them did not belong to the Senate, nor to the people of Rome, but to Augustus personally. And that province was Egypt. After defeating Mark Antony and Cleopatra in 31 BCE, Augustus did not treat Egypt as just another conquered territory. He turned it into something closer to his private kingdom, and the most lucrative one in the ancient Mediterranean. This was not symbolic, this was not ceremonial, this was not technically Roman land, but effectively imperial. No, Egypt was, in legal and administrative terms, property of Augustus himself. Roman senators were forbidden, under penalty of death, from even entering Egypt without his explicit permission. That alone tells you everything about how careful Augustus was in protecting the wealth of this province, since he didn't want ambitious aristocrats anywhere near it. And Egypt was definitely worth protecting, because it was the economic crown jewel of the Mediterranean world by far, and since practically the beginning of the first human civilizations ever. Egypt possessed the richest agricultural land in the entire empire, the Nile's predictable harvest cycles, massive grain surpluses feeding Rome's population, thriving commercial cities like Alexandria, gold mines in Nubia, largest papyrus production, textiles, luxury goods, and way more. Modern historians estimate Egypt generated around 400 to 500 million sesterces per year in revenue, and all of it flowed directly into Augustus's fiscus, not the Senate's treasury. Think about that for a moment. People like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, or Larry Ellison do not own a huge region personally, like the state of California or Texas, to give an example. Bernard Arnault does not own all of France's vineyards. Not only one single person does own the entire Gulf of Mexico's oil, but Augustus? He really owned all of Egypt alone. A real physical functioning country, even by today's countryside standards, with millions of inhabitants, agricultural output, mines, harbors, and a financial system older than Rome itself. When your personal assets include an entire ancient and historical civilization, even already by the times of antiquity, the conversation about wealth changes dramatically. But Egypt was only one part of Augustus's financial power, because as the princeps, he also controlled, though not technically owned, the imperial provinces, which were the most strategically important and economically productive regions of the empire. These included Gaul, Hispania, Lusitania, Syria, Cilicia, Galatia, Judea, Illyricum, Moesia, the Danubian frontier provinces, and parts of Asia Minor. Yeah, I know, that was a lot. Now, the Senate still governed a few peaceful provinces, places like Asia or Africa Proconsularis, but Augustus governed all the provinces that contained legions, and legions were expensive. So naturally, Augustus ensured that these provinces' taxes, customs, mining profits, and revenues flowed into the fiscus under his personal authority. This included the vast silver mines of Spain, the gold mines of Gaul and the Balkans, the lucrative trade routes of Syria, the customs duties of the eastern provinces, the immense slave markets generated by frontier wars, and the mineral, timber, iron, and agricultural reserves of the northern and western territories. Conservative calculations suggest that Augustus received 200 to 300 million sesterces annually from these imperial provinces alone, on top of Egypt's revenues. And remember, this is recurring income, not investments, not stock fluctuations, not speculative gains. This was real, physical raw wealth extracted from land, mines, crops, and human labor every single year. So even before we look at Augustus's private estates, slave holdings, personal properties, and liquidity, we can already see how absurdly wealthy he truly was. When you own Egypt outright and control the revenues of half the known world, the word wealthy feels almost too small to describe you. Augustus wasn't just rich, he was an economic superpower by himself. A one-man central bank with an empire designed to feed his treasury as efficiently as possible. And that was only the beginning, because his public revenues were massive, sure, but his private fortune was equally astonishing. Because beyond the fiscus, beyond Egypt, and beyond the provinces under his command, Augustus personally owned an extraordinary network of estates, villas, lands, and economic operations spread across Italy and throughout multiple provinces of the empire. These were active, profit-generating economic machines run with almost industrial efficiency for the standards of antiquity. And unlike the imperial revenues, these private assets did not belong to the Roman state. They belonged exclusively to Augustus, the man, not Augustus the princeps, or emperor. Let us start with the backbone of Roman private wealth, land. During the civil wars, immense quantities of property were confiscated from defeated nobles and redistributed. Many of these estates eventually found their way into the hands of Augustus, of course, either directly through confiscations or indirectly through political alliances, donations, or strategic marriages within the Julio-Claudian family. By the time he consolidated power, Augustus owned vast agricultural estates in Italy, Latium, Campania, Apulia, Etruria, and more. Olive plantations, vineyard complexes, cattle and sheep pastures, coastal fisheries, timber forests, marble quarries, entire villa complexes functioning as rural administrative capitals. Each estate was staffed by dozens, sometimes hundreds, of slaves and freedmen, running everything from olive pressing, wine production, bread making, textile production, metalworking, carpentry, and pottery. This system effectively made Augustus one of the largest private landowners in European history, even before accounting for imperial territories. And the value of these lands was not theoretical. Each produced real agricultural output, which fed the Roman market, the legions, and the emperor's own household. Their production was continuous, predictable, and monetized, the exact opposite of modern digital speculative wealth. But land is only one part of the equation, because Augustus also owned people, and in the brutal but based logic of antiquity, slaves were considered property, often extremely valuable property in fact. A skilled slave, such as a secretary, accountant, doctor, craftsman, or artisan, could cost 10,000 sesterces or even more. Augustus employed thousands of slaves across his estates, his palaces, his administrative household, his workshops, his mines, his transportation networks, his personal guard and attendants, and beyond. Modern estimates suggest Augustus may have owned 2,000 to 40,000 slaves across his various properties. Conservatively valued, this represents 80 to 150 million sesterces in quote-unquote human capital alone. A horrifying reality by our modern standards, but essential to understanding the scale of his wealth. Now imagine these slaves working his lands, producing grain, wine, olive oil, textiles, marble, bricks, wood, metal goods, livestock, and countless other products. Every amphora of wine, every jar of olive oil, every brick, every board of timber, every piece of cloth, every load of grain was part of Augustus's personal economic empire. Modern billionaires may own factories and corporations, but they do not own the workers, they do not own the literal bodies, labor, and output of millions of people, but Augustus actually did. And it doesn't stop there. He also owned private mines. Spain, Gaul, the Balkans, and parts of Greece were rich in precious metals and minerals. While many imperial mines fell under state administration, Augustus also possessed private mining rights and estates that generated continuous mineral output. Gold, silver, iron, copper, marble, all flowing into his personal treasury. And unlike modern billionaires who depend on fluctuating metal prices, Augustus controlled the supply itself. If Augustus needed more gold, he simply ordered more to be extracted. There was no market to crash, no shareholders to appease, no international regulations to obey. His wealth increased by decree. So when we speak of Augustus's private fortune, we are talking about a massive network of productive estates, tens of thousands of slaves, a plethora of villas and businesses, workshops, agricultural industries, fisheries, timber forests, quarries, mines, and entire logistical networks moving goods across the empire. This is not wealth valued by markets. This is not wealth estimated by stock analysts. This is not wealth that can crash in a digital crisis. This is real, tangible, physical, raw wealth, the wealth of land, labor, minerals, food, and production. We are no longer talking about numbers on a screen. We are talking about the machinery of civilization itself. So now that we have explored Augustus's lands, his estates, his private industries, and his vast personal empire of labor and production, it is time to examine the most straightforward part of his fortune, his raw, physical money, the gold, the silver, the precious metals stored in vaults, temples, palaces, and imperial treasuries, the piles of coinage accumulated over decades of conquest, administration, taxation, and tribute. Because unlike modern billionaires whose quote-unquote net worth exists mostly on spreadsheets and computer servers, Augustus' wealth also existed in the most concrete form possible, metal coins that you could hold, weigh, melt, store, or convert into armies overnight. And ancient authors give us clues, especially Suetonius. Suetonius tells us that Augustus spent 600 million sesterces on public works, distributed 100 million in grain to the people, left 150 million to the Roman populace in his will, gave 40 million directly to the Praetorian Guard, and funded countless games, festivals, donatives, temples, salaries, and rewards over decades. These numbers are not guesses. These are documented expenditures. And when you consider that these expenses represent only a fraction of what Augustus had at any given moment, historians estimate that his accessible liquid reserves, his cash on hand, must have been between 800 million and over 1 billion sesterces. To put that into perspective, a Roman legionary earned 900 sesterces per year. A centurion earned about 18,000. A wealthy general might earn 400,000 sesterces annually. If Augustus wanted to, he could pay every legionary in the empire for years, fund multiple full-scale wars out of pocket, build entire cities without touching the state treasury, or literally buy every major aristocratic estate in Italy and still have money left over. Now imagine having that kind of liquidity today, not in stocks, not in bonds, not in digital assets, but in actual gold and silver, physically stored in vaults and treasuries, ready to use the moment you needed it. That is what Augustus possessed. And here is the key difference that most people forget. Modern billionaires do not have billions of dollars sitting in cash. They don't even have billions in physical assets. Elon Musk can't walk into a room and see $500 billion stacked in gold bars. Jeff Bezos can't touch or hold his net worth. Bernard Arnault can't weigh his fortune on a scale. Larry Page does not have vaults filled with coins. Their wealth exists primarily in digital shares, whose values rise and fall based on market psychology, algorithms, investor mood swings, and speculative projections. Augustus's wealth did not depend on the Nasdaq staying green. It did not depend on investor confidence. It did not evaporate because of a tweet or a cyber attack. It existed as gold coins, silver ingots, treasure hoards, jewels, war booty, diplomatic gifts, temple offerings, and tens of millions worth of taxable metals. You could bury Augustus's treasure in the ground and come back 2,000 years later. It would still be there, still valuable, still usable. Now imagine if tomorrow the world experienced a global, permanent power shutdown, not 24 hours like Spain recently had, but forever. Every computer system offline, every server erased, every digital ledger gone, every bank frozen, every stock market wiped clean. Well, guess what? Most modern billionaires would lose the vast majority of their net worth instantly. Their stocks would become meaningless, their accounts inaccessible, their portfolios erased, their wealth exposed for what it is, a digital abstraction dependent on machines staying alive. But Augustus, nothing would change. His gold wouldn't disappear, his silver wouldn't vanish, his estates, mines, forests, and slaves wouldn't flicker out of existence. His revenues would keep flowing exactly as they did yesterday, because his wealth was not digital, it was material, durable, physical, and just real. And this is why comparing Augustus to modern billionaires is almost absurd. They play in the world of numbers. He played in the world of resources. He could build, buy, feed, conquer, fund, and mobilize with wealth that existed whether the world was stable or collapsing. And when you stack all of these layers, his lands, his slaves, his mines, his estates, and his physical treasure, you realize something staggering. Augustus's cash alone could surpass the real physical wealth of the richest billionaires of today. Easy. So in the end, just out of curiosity and for fun, what was Augustus's total net worth? Well, as I said at the beginning, it's extremely difficult to be specific about those numbers since it's impossible to make an exact conversion to the current value of a modern currency. But if I had to give an inch, in my humble opinion, and again, only in my extremely vague humble opinion, Augustus's net raw worth could have been an estimate between 3.5 trillion and 7 trillion current American dollars. Which again, it's just an estimate, but if it is the case, that would be equivalent to the GDP of a big modern European country like Germany or France, except that it would actually be real money and wealth, and not bullshit numbers built on debt. And with that, I think this is a good moment to end this video. I hope you enjoyed my analysis of the possible true fortune of Emperor Augustus and the real, raw, concrete influence that it could have had in the time and world in which he lived. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, become a member of the channel if you want to support me and my work, and comment on what you thought of it. Thank you to the newest members of the channel, Demon Dan and Duke de Alba de Tormes. Shout out to all two of you, and I deeply appreciate your support of my work and projects to come. And without anything else to say, see you next time.